Don't bake. Welcome. It's nice to have you all here. Nice to have these two poets here. Nice to have a baby lurking around. The baby that's here is former tenants, and she's I was saying, the fourth baby, born from this house. It's always fun. In trying to think of how to introduce Mr. Jones, who will be our first reader, I kept coming back around to 1980. And in 1980, I had just moved here, and there were two events that year that brought into relief, I guess it's the best way to put it, a myth, a fantasy that I had been living with, perpetrated by most of my college teachers, that the artist, if you were a real artist, you isolated yourself, locked yourself away. Your poem, your painting, whatever it was, came before family, before friends, before domestic life that you should have, even if you were Gertrude Stein, somebody to take care of all that stuff for you. And in 1980, there was an interview with John Lennon who washed all that away and said it was absolute crap. And it was a profound interview. It was in the New York Times, I believe it was in October of that year. And suddenly, a whole number of things started to kind of coalesce in my head about, and priorities is the wrong word, but about an actual life, and a life that was whole, and a life that started to pull in life into the work rather than trying to get away from it all. And as I was standing around thinking about all this in relation to Keith, I mean, meeting Keith, I have known him for a couple of years now, right? And actually, no, since Bill left. I think that was the first time, Bill Corbett, when he decamped to Brooklyn. Traitor's dog. But in his life, I have watched him circulating around family, wife, pleasure to meet you last, who I've heard endless stories about. In fact, I think most of our conversations have been about wife, life, family, work. He's at Harvard, and in the midst of all this, he has been producing this gorgeous poetry that was, having just met over dinner, and you sort of nod and go, "Oh, it's great to meet you," and then finally getting to hear the poetry was like, hello. This is a poetry that is got teeth, it's got breadth, and we're better off that it's being produced, and it's coming from that place of wholeness that I like to think of, that we need to move out from. And it's delightful to have you here, because when I think of the people in the area doing things, you're one of the people that kept coming to mind that I needed to have in here. He's a press wafer author as well, with Amazing Family, and it is a delight to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome, Keith Jones.
So it's an honor, of course, to be here, to add my voice to the voices that have spoken in this room, and also in this series, as this is a more recent rebooting of the series. And many of the poets and thinkers that I admire spoke in the earlier iteration of this series. So to be part of the second generation of it is really was very special for me. I always find the most difficult part of reading this part, which is what to say, right? To sort of frame the poem, well, not frame them, as it were. This is a manuscript, the title of which is Shorn Ellipses, Echoes Erring. It's in two parts. The first part is a long meditation on Cy Twombly and Cy Twombly's work, but also of the absences and omissions, which I think are profound ones in his work. I think part of what drew me, or has drawn me to his work always, is being just on the edge of intelligibility. And also the sort of destabilization that is always rendered quite palimpsestically and vanishingly, these sorts of glyphs that disappear before one's eyes. And also, I think, there's people may know of Michel Foucault, the famous French philosopher. He has a quote that's dear to me, and it comes actually in the preface to a work of one of his friends, Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. It's Anti-Oedipus. And in the preface to that text, which is a seminal text in the 70s, at the end of that foreword, he says, "Do not be enamored of power." And I think of Twombly, interestingly, as someone who's enamored of the West. And this was part of my own interest in thinking not so much about the Middle Sea, which Twombly does much think about, right? But more about the Middle Passage and the absence of the Middle Passage. And that, for me, is the most profound mission. So these poems tarry with the sea and the ocean as a place where much history is forever submerged, right? That needs to be recalled. So these poems are a kind of working through of, let's say those absences. The second part is called Echo's Errand, and it's sort of trying to live in the aftermath of, let's say, something like the Middle Passage, because I think we still live within that historical epoch, what it means to love. And so what you'll see or hear, and we'll see how far I can get through this, is a proliferation of I's and you's and he's and she's, none of which are intended to be stable. They're actually quite porous. And part of what I'm trying to mark there is the manyness that we all are, the porousness of us. So I think of this suite and what I'll be reading today as a kind of dramaturgy of voices. So, shorn ellipses. Weightless clutch of sea. I see woven things, she says, celestial, prodigious, ridden out to task, profuse, line by line, gnawing at the wind's keep, topped plain of arrival, sewn fangs kept for feasting, broadcloth caught, loose mesh, weave we call season, weightless clutch of sea, calabash thick as alabaster, as fountain pen, as seeds devouring time, forms slip past prior to, pieces of, drying in the comatter of light. Lucidity subtly notched. Waves, a fundament, emphatic, undergird the airily whole, scarlet dance at noontime, arithmetic. If straight lines tidy the time of death, here, she says, we glimpse eternity's jagged edge. Here we feel crabward the steady, unsteady way of animations. Lucidities subtly notched. Warm care felt at, felt towards, all unities in transit. Under, unto, the finite will, undone, returned to, flushed out, washed ashore again, calmed, you, aggrieved not by lost references. Clothed in crossroads is sinking. A simple touch or stitch tempers ricochet in close-up. Fixed grip of clot of being's debt, which cools the fevers of night. There, where the middle sea began, battered relics appear, geographic. Clothed in crossroads, the buoyant herd, adrift, wound upon the water. The long hold of blues in shadow, the we, a quiet shade. Paint me wide, oceanic. You say tear and tear are surface effects. Dawn's frightful keep. Echo of our inmost edges. Air is not a word, E-R-R. Air is not a word. What rises, an invisible estate, aslant in long missives. You say clouds, times, handcut. Reference without a point of view. You stitch dark planks of white night together, hum the great sphere, the faint summons of delicate surmise, the all told in peer and limb, echo of our inmost edges. Variations we see ear to window, of lilting diaphanous light. I see the sea through you, fleets of open, broken vessels. Language signed to itself. Say, it is language signed to itself. A sentence in longhand, long prior to letters, chalk tied to beauty's tale, reluctance spun, daylight's pointed beak, pointing where? Eager the arrow is, eager the emperor is, eager to sketch his shadow. Wild lips, a wound. A risen echo of furthest edge, argent. Your wild lips a wound, a swollen incision. Surface effects shredded to mute. Frantically thin, like a long dead man forever talking. Never saying a word he meant. Chatterworn as the wound over the actual grows fonder, more profuse, bridles a bit. A torrent now, this prized cut, this creased propellant, where needs tremor, spills out, drips, seeps, presses up some rusty ledge. In you, you crawl, you slip, you overstate the sparse, tilled passage. The graven burrow you still flounder in. Voyages, forgetting, asymmetric, aerialist, stove. Warmth in deeper recesses. You say, abandoned, sink, rise, surface again. List, the haggard craft, monochromatic, no longer in luck. Of his ilk, antiphony, a new renewal delayed, long kept in pretty snares, bursts which loosen, which recall the pretty waves of beauty's wake, airily made, barks cutting arcs in water. You like radio, you like song. No palm tree, no laurel, no swan. You are sharp feeling, rushed, exitless, fall. Arc life to infidel, like speech to stutter, lifts an archaic curse. Note how day's encumbrance took eons, she said. Hammered thin, fine, crater lake light, oblique, hoofbeats, mad rush, fumes of final days, turning you, yes, contemporary. Most alive, drifting up from long ago on bone white night. You like radio, you like song, you soften me, strip me bare, which is why I like your white cliffs best, bald into paper whites, a plinth, beginnings echo, revenant echo, forms echo, prow, stern, keel, blue streak of ore, bled through all aspects of. Enter walls, discrepant waves, backbone of seams, boat, hoofbeat, beat slap of skin, lost at sea. Sea is west, where sunset is. Sea is the weary need of feather, of wood, where I, too, look entire to float. The imperial city surrounds, its history, so blue. The imperial city surrounds, its history, so blue, slurs my lust for you, Neomachia, middle sea, middle passage, mechanical, blind, oceanic way, man overboard, woman overboard, thrown, still thrown, leaping. Of shore and grief. Wheels, crayons, house paint suddenly panoramic, chalk on walls, old equestrian battles, the wine-chosen edge, you say, is social light, is fine snow to fountain, is molecular to these dark waters, audible the trap, the solitude, leagues beneath you, unmourned. A is for Achilles, his circumferences, flight in pure space. Imagine you are all interval, pursued, pierced, haloed in veils of sea, in veils of sand, in veils of shore and grief and speed. The islands that you loved, combed out, internal, in these strains of beauty's summons, slow wheel to steady, creeks eternal, having been given to peaks. The fortress is hard to find, crafts taut curve, stretched thin, the thing you pluck. The lattices like rigging, spines of leaves, stones thrown, mystic, sigh, skip. You say, old man is I, little cloud is I, youth's craned waves, incandescent, sweet, tensile strength, my love for you, sweet grass, cliffs, kiss, the jagged, limbed coronations of color. Blown rake of tears. Or do they? Or are they, she says, confessions from above. Loss you can do little with, bent long ways into silence. Silence worsens the roar. Wake of wave, blown rake of tears. Xenophones swirling loss, 10,000 men attuned to the void. A tired cry, thick the cause, wars inexhaustible echo. 4 black girls, Kitty, Genovese, napalm. Cruel mounds where the heart wrench is, where wrong is, where wrong lies in fields and seas unburied. Shade of, bound to you. Bound to you, too elliptically, what the sun will face in a different motif, plainest of threads. Speak of your renewal. The sky is a witch seed that blooms, washes away, cleans, is silence. A crisp bed sheet, canvas, page, overboard and overbearing. The leaping is inside you, your hurt, far away. The eyes will face entangled fields, the sea, the first experiment. No fences if desire is, no fences make do. You let gold return to unquicksilvered parts, to feldspar, to blind river way. Let it sink back in to earth, to burn bright alone among roots, quiet grubs and clusters. You who miss your nocturnal light, your passional underground stars, warmth in what it is, descending, a shiver, frail, it keeps in voyage. Salt-flaked, shimmering skin, don't you remember, is sinking. Man overboard, your swollen land open most, bursting within. Sunk under the weight of testimony, lavish foam, X, where middle sea began. Swimmer, not yet free. A wind forever panting, perishing, final facts there, where myth went massive. What the page won't take, weary of its own echo, wakened fur, wake again. Here you clutch at Euripides, moon at quartermast. Ravish this indigo, island air, Summer's wheeling advance, crinkling stubbled earth, to lean on, a vanishing line, heteroclite, reeds in the dying light of holy water. The old problem of the present is new. Straying cloudmen seized by the happy short life of labor, of sense blind to you. Woman, you say, old, sail, cloth, her pronoun yellowing, watch how the moon slicks the riverway, mirrors what will is, will creeps through, topples its virgin self. As old ways of earth cluster round, as present crafts conceal you, as tidal winds reach further in and out, woven child rags make you coast through salt and twisted kelp, wishing too much, voyage proof, this century, terror white. Shorn ellipses. While I fall away, the grandeur, alas, shrinks your stairs' visage. A fountain full of thoughts, its having been there, by your side, forgotten. Arches through which, where weeds once were now but love's bouquet. And now a whimsy's bequest. After all, of much decision, a promise. The paradigm's lovely hoax. So you say again and do again and go hard after the bristling hope. Polish the sky. Pristine little shoes you walk the heavens with. Of course, you cannot bear what you cannot hold. Apostrophes and their matters of possession, which ask of you, of all those things you cannot bear, love, love, love. I dare you. So, that's the end of the first section. Do we have time for a few more? Yeah? How much time, Jen?
10 minutes.
That's only been 10
No,
minutes?
you're 15.
Oh,
We have no overlords here.
yeah, I know, but,
Forever.
but you
We
know,
will
I also
wander
want
away
to
at some point. Just go.
Where's the dictionary? So, so now I'll read from the second section. Again, titled Echoes Area. Sheet music. You listen long enough and wonder long enough and wait. As God sends, accumulate or don't. Bid as aerialists will the air to give way. One thinks of siblings, speedboats, long waves redundant, blue barrier, blue beneath. And then there was water, a barrage of grief, glyph in the middle, multiple and staggering. I give this machine to you, she says, stolen bright God, skins raiment of wonder. Not so, where the ladder leads, because fires rage, pleats upon the water, washed up on shore of day, a minor, new world among us. Let accident be everything, all at once, rough paradiso of day, some force shoreward inside, cove all, lantern you drew in the chiaroscuro of intimate. You say applaud, I say rebuttal, folded animal circumference, near gravel, near grain, a songbird's plume you cannot command. You went where the young oar was, adrift upon a mercy, a phenomenon distinctly plated, like solar light hammered thin. There is nothing here gigantic, illuminata, mob, rule, you of grassblade and sunbridge, of midge and moat, one long molecular beam on this island of print. This poem, titled Bluest Dome, has a headnote by Paul Celan. The world is gone. I have to carry you. Angles, island, inlaid, lay in glass. But of night you were the sparest root, unaccountably in solitude. Acutest seeker, a godsend, a flock, she says, of copper stalks, of embers atop your castle's keep. Fan, tasmatic, you say, an empire's wall of grief. Root word, liturgical tether. The lichened part of exile, the pricked edge, the old wharf's endangerments, ferrying you inward, you say, outside your window. Root word, liturgical tether, as if your mirrors float irresistibly beneath faint petals, night ochre, borealis, lunar tinged peak. Come to me, sweet peonies, in the second life. I leave letters for you. Primal, you say, as pretty. Cleave as stone. Blue deposits. Creek spine of surface, eye with gusts. Concerning sensations, double breath, hidden animals. I was reference, you murmured, blue fluidity of voice. You, she said, could prosper too in contemplation, leaving your distances whole, way of, lucid, well, lapidary, useless truth, cave, length of vessel, where mind and cloud make page. I have pored over that and you, hated how honest the torrent is, and let it be mine, not sheltered, neither poplar nor linden, the shade shattering just where you left, and I wonder in advance and cannot wait, painting the phosphorescent side of leaves, where mine and cloud make page, and I sail my own transfigurations, these long time ago, the pyre, as crisp curtailment fulfills belief. Where wind was first to walk on water. Permission is not what I ask of you. The great wandering is into the interior. I try to think in singulars, she says, in numbers long since expired, and you are one of those impossibilities, a lucid upward ladder. It is all proximity, listless, misspent, as circles tied into theorems. Why thief my miracles from me? In the realm of my own uncertainty, in my own upward draft, where wind was first to walk on water, I remain with you, a misadventure. I sleep, I avail, all further witnessing. These animal cone dwellings that depart, upturned feet to flames. It is a corona of deep breathing, you say, in these matters of devotion. If only our exhalations could cut a hole through the wishes we expose. As gulls unspool, cross in keen bow, haul the sea air in, quiet engine, the crag trim ocean, shot through, barnacled, brown flecked, inland we lay. And then the last three. Interior ampersand and aura. You didn't know enough of it to say, she says. little quiet space at the cusp. You'll find me there, where I place a stone, slowing the circles of your reception, your attention, your receptivity. It is all a drink of letters at alphabet's edge, where they fall like little broken vessels, where our exile is scriptural, your geometries, my ministrations. Maybe when I find it, it'll be all right. Life, breath, astral thread, interior, ampersand, and aura. The lucid upward ladder. Pleiades above you, all mock above your bed, lightning in the folds of Andromeda's feet. You can look up to Aries, Aldebaran, tonight not occulted by an orange-red moon. She lies, you lie, seeing, only wailing, wheeling things stretching high above their branching hair and heads. A spiral notebook, she said, unthreaded, unbound, and with the needle turned. Cormorant, perch, eastern red cedar. She'd made a constellation of it, points punched through by a pen. The paper lay in carpet, busy at stabbing the ink head through. Drawing a ring, she said. Echoes airing. You send to embrace the sweetest of tender sips from your cup for always. The moving chords moving move us, and so the gale and the antler horn, the quiver nest where I bury myself in your gown and drink of you. We pause, we glow, and go out again. This thirst, a spiral. You, I, rest, succumb to, shield to, skin of, tally with. Say then, I'm your was, your obscenity of water. Thank you.
Before I proceed on, I want to do one thank you to that character back there, Mr. Tomas Pinto Franco, who's doing all the video work for us here and producing videos for each of the readings. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the old series but, in talking, because the old series looms in my imagination and as a place where I met so many different people. In a weird way, I met you, Don, there. But the way I met you was, I believe you shipped me that copy of the magazine in the midst of doing it. But it remains, there's several different people, and you are one of the significant ones that I missed and did not get into that series. The thing became sort of a mechanical beast that was working on its own after a while, and things happened. But you sure should have been there. The magazine that you produced, that Mr. Wellman produced, it stands in my imagination with Timbler and Notice and Sulfur. I've been talking this whole series that I've been doing here with Exit about community and the poet's participation in that community, and there is no better example of the breadth of activity brought to bear upon all the possibilities of poetry than that of Donald Wellman. We've got translations, poetry, magazine work. He's a committed audience member, constantly showing up for everybody's reading, which is no small endeavor. And the poetry, as I've been going back to this week, is just beautiful and rich. And the generosity that lays there is unmatched. And it's a pleasure to finally have him here. Please welcome Mr. Dodd.
Thank you. The journal that I edited started in '81. It was called Oars. The first issue, Coherence, immediately had an international appeal. And let that be. You can check them out at Harvard, or I have copies. But anybody who wants to correspond with me can get a hold of, almost as a gift, if you will. Jack and I used to ramble in the wasteland behind the Lake Street factory, seeking Sergeant Gott, our liberator. He was off to the war in Korea. It was a fable-like Parsifal. Clack, clack, a stick beating the wire fence. Another stick cut from an alder jumped and dodged like an animal on a leash, hopping as it bumped the cracks in the walk. Jack's aunt, he said, had buried a cat in the garden with a vertical Madonna bathtub shrine. Or was it his brother? When the sleigh passed down Hollis Street, the hard candies rained like grenades, and fingers were bent and bruised. My sister wanted to murder me. In the yard of the bakery, the electric cars went in circles all night. There was a crash, and one turned over, its motor screeching like a maimed horse. The policemen chased us home like cops and robbers into the tenements of humiliation and poverty. My dad had yellow teeth. His mother sold cigars. Our Lithuanian neighbor gathered crate wood from the different grocery stores on Main Street and transported it home in a radio flyer wagon. He broke it into bundles and stored them in the yard. To me, he was the same old man Mike who threw furniture around before a thunderstorm. The barber kept his black Cadillac and rented space in the horse barn. There was also a hearse. Joe Bedard was a muscular locomotive mechanic who strolled home from Union Station, stripped to his singlet like a wrestler, black from head to foot with machine oil. He could not raise his arm to comb his hair. Like my father, I have one eye. Shadows still surprise me, confusing fact and fiction. Somewhere in a sandpit famous for rattlesnakes are the pods of deserted boxcars rusting in the chemical breeze. A world transfixed in suspended dust, a metallic throb in the jaw. Night winds carried emanations from the cellar, mold and coal, damp and kerosene, wildly sprouting potatoes with lavender tentacles. My father dreamed that showgirls danced in the alley. Tijan was not a happy man. Part of this poem is a tribute to Kerouac, as though he and I grew up in the same household. Tijan, Tijan is the nickname for I don't know, after that last reading, I almost want to read. That's a poem I've written a while ago, but I sort of wanted to introduce you to that side of me. The book itself, Roman Exercises, that I'm reading from, I like to read it to you from cover to cover. It involves a sort of game, and maybe I'll explain it to you in a bit. I wanted to read this one. I'm giving you testimony to my working class tenement roots, okay? For Loyalty Day, May 1, might as well have been this year. Once I aspired to be a minor poet, and I dedicated my life to that end. I did not intend with this humility or mocking defiance, nor with minoritarian purpose, thanks to Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari. Instead, I have suffered as have others. I have been pretentious. I have not found my God or a means to address the deity. Where does the accent fall? Deity, deity, deity. Celebrate your loyalties as you will. Here's to the working man, and that, the woman too. The sun flows down my beard and wets my stinking shirt. That's the beginning of a Russian fairy tale, apparently. They always begin, I was there, the suds flowed down my beard. Now this is the more delicate me. Inversely, these are eyes. Eyes. Skyscrapers. Louis Zukowski. To him, at puberty, she, of pre-Raphaelite curls, gave a Webster's dictionary bound in calfskin, inscribed, because you love words. Madeline Theriault. On his mother's summer island he cried, obstinate, ashamed. Eyes claim islands, his hands name fish, flora, perfumed bodies of girls were other. Sort of grammar school memories. And I love to read this whole series, as I said. I just read one that sort of has the loud voice in it again. And this poem is for David Wojnarowicz, who is a great visual artist whose films were banned from the gallery in Corcoran Gallery in Washington, D.C., which is a great stirring of anti-gay protest even before Trump was elected. The poem is called Ea. Half man, half fish, he is water submerged, matrix convulsed, tremulous, Ea, the caw and chatter of aves. Aye, papaya, sing the nursing mothers. He bathes the body of the king, and he is the king. He is male and female. His indiscretions drive the honey pump of resistance. How diffuse the two. His own voice, decaying death, said Calavera, preaches apocalypse, poverty, and abuse. So, and snip, the shrill judgment of the already doomed fills the cathedral nave. Drumming shadows ejaculate. The nasal caw of my nightmare comes back to me. Unclean! Unclean! So the thing about that series is it's a conceptual series that works a reference to honeybees into every poem in some way. There was a reference to honeybees in this poem someplace, I forget. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's the only poem that doesn't have that. And the first poems I read are sort of a little appendix of my greatest hits. So that's a good book to buy. I read Kerouac so that I could try to get away with a little bit of reading of the work of Henri Albiach, from whom, like Creeley, I learned how many stops you could make in a brief line. Not only internal punctuation, but enjambment. It's the art. The poem is called Après cela, moi j'ai regardé. Une mémoire atemporelle, s'annule et croît dans ces fragments allusifs qu'une logique ignorée unit. Le désir appréhende ces fragments juxtaposés, où la peur, l'appréhension entrelac du réel et de ces images subites, rapidité de l'instant, pulsion qui se joue de la destruction et de sa destruction. Point de mémoire précise, le déportement dans un contexte évolutif de la fiction, masque, double, en perspective, asymptote. Le corps se projette, se devise, se mémorise, une ferveur corporelle, grammaticale, un onanisme de la lettre, s'auto-engendre, projection, l'air s'irradie, bouche fermée, le hasard comme fiction, l'enjeu, le hasard comme logique, l'énigme. That's just a part of this poem in my book, Albiach. Ceylon, which is also my deep reading of everything that Ceylon ever wrote. And a third section on my work from Spanish poetry. I suppose you'd like to hear the English. Does anybody want to hear the English? Okay. It's a beautiful book. After that, I myself looked, and I'll read just the same lines, not the whole poem. An atemporal memory annuls itself and grows in these elusive bits that an ignored logic unifies. Desire apprehends these fragments juxtaposed, where fear, the apprehension of interlacing of the real and with these rapid images, sudden, fleeting, the drive that plays with destruction, and from its destruction, points of precise memory, their behavior in an evolving context of fiction, mask, double, in perspective, asymptote. The body projects itself, divides, memorizes a fervor, bodily, grammatical, and onanism of the letter engenders itself. Projection, the air irradiated, mouth closed, chants like fiction, the state, chants as logic, the enigma. So, onanism, huh? I'm going to read from my new manuscript, which is called Essay Poems. And not really, I'm going to read another translation, which has to do with the topic of onanism. It has to do with the most beautiful Spanish poet of the same age as Garcia Lorca. They were students and perhaps lovers. Look up Virgen Cerrado, The Enclosed Garden. I'm going to read from that poem, which refers, other than myself, I believe that Emilio Parados was the loneliest poet that ever lived on the face of the earth. Such an onanist. Oración junto al agua. Nada pido para mí, para el que está conmigo y conmigo ha de vivir. Prayer next to the water. I ask nothing for myself, but for him who is with me and must live with me. I'm not such a bad companion, not such a forgetful friend, ni amigo tan olvidado, that in sustaining my life, I gave him my own cares, and more. As this my life, de la suya está tan junta, with his is so united, that not even in my shadow are the channels of his figure distinct. We walk so closely, tan cerca vamos andando, that in the step left by my gate, his footprint comes behind. And I fear that even in asking what I think I ask for him, tan solo pido por mí, I ask only for myself. I do not know what my friend is to be, nor what his friendship seeks, nor what I might give him that thus my body receives. Solo sé que el ser eterno. I only know that God willing, although he is with me now, he comes fleeing from a master with whom tomorrow he will leave, without my being able to detain him. And if at the end he has to leave me, who may suddenly take his flight, may freedom come to me, soledad que tanto temo, solitude that I so fear. All of this is preliminary to reading essay poems. You'll hear some echoes of it. Essay poems is my new manuscript. There's a phrase of Theodor Adorno that essays are better than treatises of philosophy because you can be free with them. Well, I've taken the next step. I've written philosophical poems that are essay poems that do not tend to make sense. There's 120 pages. I can't stop writing them. I wrote one this morning. So I'm going to start in the middle of the manuscript with a poem called Lives of the Poets. My beloved Emilio did not study with Husserl, he says. He was a student in Freiburg then. Instead, he courted solitude and dreamed of the boy who inspired him to study animal husbandry. Entre cañones, Antonio perished in the Battle of Madrid. My grim Antonio of another age learned his Latin from Augustinians who employ corporal punishment for wayward boys. The donkey screamed when the soldier bashed in its brains. Now in his old age, his daughters and granddaughter comfort him. The nun with a concertina regaled the girls who skipped rope in the alley in those days. The sexes did not mix during recess. The boys gambled with marbles or threw pennies against a wall. The poets' glasses like saucers. Donald loved languages. Gerard, who wrote in sprung rhythm. Donald venerated James, who sculpted among statues and fingered the anus of Venus, silver apples of the moon. He lived in a garage with an earthen floor. The linoleum reeked of axle grease and horse manure. Among his books were Rabelais. In adolescence, he had walked along the Rhone where mustard bloomed. He knew a Russian song about the margin of the sea. His Rambo revelry befell upon a Neckar River barge. He saw the Camargue with his adolescent daughter. They slept in the cloister, not by usura, Saint-Trophin. Orange soda in the night cafe, Ireland and Spain, long after inspiration had bent his bones into walking canes. Grim, his love of solitude prepared him for eternity. Cliches like milkweed float among embroideries. It's not a poem about a crumb of dust, as Edward Taylor wrote, but of triumph for all its jags and jars. In the windy blue Canadian air, he climbed to the rooftop and swept old carbon from the chimney flue. Herman Melville suspends philosophers' skulls from the yardarm of his Pequod, stateless enemy. My Fisher King not the seaport polis where poets' children thrive in a park above the harbor tides. In Australian desert, maternal men celebrate fatherhood, celebrate fatherhood. Bob, Allen, John, that would be Robert Greeley, Allen Ginsberg, John Wieners. After the loss of his eye, his family moved to West Acton, where the train to Fitchburg paused. My grandmother took me to the Eye and Ear on the Nashua line, a Woolworth and Scully Square brilliant with plastic airplanes, French toast slathered in chemical syrup. John, do you remember Harvard Gardens in mystical 55, Stephen and Robin and Jack? No one listens to poetry. I'm just back from the home on Dana Street, where Charlie, who always wore farmer's jeans, waits for Mitzel. In the parking lot, old men smoke salvaged butt ends. A poetry collective is a tender memory. We met on Bromfield Street. We met in Christiansted and in the afterlife on the north shore of Haiti. Bombs where poets gathered, Baghdad and Boston. Headlines in El País, rent boys that lonely summer. Spain like New England, where lives are never as they seem to those who seek the genuine article. Love in the antique mall, graves unmarked, kids who die is my subject as it was Langston's, men of many hues, an international tribe. Where lie the mothers in the plethora of lives? Hermione and H.D., fictive and real, in the snows of yesteryear are Margaret and Gertrude, Suzanne of Martinique, Elena's Tina Modotti, Juna who roams the world in search of home and hope. My school of exile is a form of men and women, adolescent intrusions, as this document shows, a common frailty among old men. The frothy brew of my exuberance leaves me nonplussed before the need to write and weave citations into my text, a habit of my Aunt Gladys. Her silver curls, her mirror and brush of plated gold. Margaret asks how I survived our family life, our dad's cannibalistic rage. Exile from the mills was easy enough for me. First a coffin maker, and then a professor, the dissident Thoreau, my contemporary. I hunted the condemned father, as was the case with Neil, the mark of Cain on my brow. More kin to Grendel than the hero, I wandered marshlands and botanized legends of flesh-eating plants, sinkholes that swallowed cattle, my Irish bog, my mother's native land, Vo Virus Du. This book will have about 10 poems of that length in it. Mixed with some little ones. The boy held an owl in his eyes. The skin over the flat bridge of his nose freckled. He had no chin. With the passage of years, identity dissolves in the flat blue light that mesmerizes a proud house on High Street. Memory searches for his name, surprised at how easily it rejects so many before settling like a bird of prey on one. I wonder too about the becoming bird or animal in the life of the boy, acrid flecks of tobacco, bitter on the lower lip, and the rowdy wrestling among the strong. I sat outside the ring watching the erotic play that displays the anger that constricts the throat in the name of the father. In the loft, exposed beams provided nooks for pigeons to roost. Bird shit bred worms that infected the mattress where we lay in our lovemaking, his dick pressed against my anus. All around the barn now, And along the fence line, a shocking display of forsythia ignites the very bowels of beauty. Joy is caught on the wing of this light. An uncanny face or simulacrum, Medusa reversed. This is a separate little jewel, and it quotes from a very famous lecture by Celan when he received the prize as the best poet in Germany at the time. So it's a short poem. An uncanny face or simulacrum, Medusa reversed. It might be a petrifaction, a boiled and preserved New Guinea head, a boiled and preserved New Guinea trophy. Vielleicht schrumpft gerade hier das Medusenhaupt. Faciality is divine and duplicitous. Faciality is a trait of Jean Dubuffet. Philosophy requires the face of the interlocutor. Poetry converses with that person within you who looks on from outside. This is another essay poem, not as long as the one I just read. Choros. On that island lives a nation of poets. The poets have perfectly round heads with appendages for locomotion and for lifting the objects that they daily encounter. All the creation in that world is a living, sentient soul. Each part has a life with properties of its own. The heavens and the planets are animals, icons. The gods created time in order to observe the intervals of rotation. One living sphere revolves within another. The head within the heart produces the music. Among Yoruba, as a child matures, it is said to grow into its head. Judith Butler chose to revisit the concept of the receptacle, or chora, that empty pouch from which all springs with marsupial elegance. Naming of what cannot be named is penetration and erasure, she writes. The receptacle, as Timaeus asserts, is the nurse of all becoming. It is a matter of translation. For becoming is always imperfect, and so indeed is translation. Among neurons, dendrites are receptors. As used here, translation is a process. The chora is the mother of the urtext that haunts her own dreams. Are the traces of the All-Father's cosmic finger a script to be held in the hands and studied, or only smears that dissolve and become indistinguishable from the clinamen that distributes indissoluble substances across the night sky? Horace declaimed the muse gave genius to the Greeks, the power of expressing themselves in round periods. Roman youth learned by long computation to subdivide a pound into 100 parts. Grais ingenium, grais dedit ore rotundo, musa loge praeter laudem nullius avaris, Romani pueri longis rationibus, essen discut in partis centum deducere. Grey ice and gaming, grey ice dedit rotan or, mus loci praeter lauds null as anus. The woman who helped me from the rubber dinghy on the Antarctic shore has been likened to a nurse. She dispensed broad specifics, eucalyptus or mint. I am propelled backwards by a nameless pain associated with the loss of a body part that takes form in my imagination. When I grieve, tears weep from the socket from which an eye has been surgically removed. The ghost penis I inherited from my mother. Descend now further into the gravel pit and scrape Sanskrit from pitted knees. Descend further now into the gravel pit and scrape Sanskrit from pitted knees. Death Valley pupfish nibble the diver's face. I'm going to read two more, is that okay? Dislocated melancholy. Is this the sad loss that brings tears? Or is it the small portion of sustenance that enables mental excursions? Images of reconciliation is when fathers recognize their daughters. A soap opera or King Lear cause my lips to tremble. Once in an imaginary apprenticeship, I was understudy to the fool. My voice cracked when I pled with the king to have mercy on himself before he waged war on friends and allies. Now I wonder about the many words that I have prepared. Have they served to elevate my spirit? Do they bring solace to yours as you sit there, my son, harried by the demands of children? The snow that will not release the year to its purpose prevents our meeting, as too often it has done. This poem actually has a title. It's called Conjuring. Words and constellations catch my eye. Prospero, I inscribe Galaxias. Con cada resolution I cry. The practice is neither deliberate nor random. After all, my mind has shaped the environment that sustains my habits. Poems in German upon the piano, enchantments of a girl, da stieg ein Baum, o Rhein, übersteigen, o Orpheus singt, o hoher Baum im Ohr. I am lost. Dante has wormed his way among couch cushions. I wanted foamy lace as when a dolphin plunges in azure that ripples its swallow through indigo seas. Internal programming prompts me to assess what is relevant to poetry's advance. By way of whim, something old comes to mind that I long claimed as mine, but never truly understood. The poem is the cry of its occasion, Wallace Stevens expostulates. Yellow-green moss where wastewater trickles, a rivulet at the edge of the garden, seeps into the field of vision. How is it that these observations stir perception or burn their affect into mind is, at best, fortuitous, as if nymphs and demigods supervise moonrise harvest. Surprise blindsides the soul. Lezama Lima wrote in Revelación de mi fiel Habana, el tiempo tiene un cuerpo invisible, es la eternidad. On the margin of the stream of thought, I had hoped to find a resting place for melancholy, and there it was, staring me in the face. Time has an invisible body. It is the soul. Straining for amazement, serial composition anticipates its end. Sparks within a penumbra, seated among hydrangeas, the musician finds chords unknown to me. Alberto Masciano, o organismo que perdurar. These the conjunto that populates the clouds above the meadow, a strumming in the rye, and nodding blades of wheatgrass unleash lacy jags of semen. Sleep, sweet sleep, sweet sleep, sweet sleep. Heavy eyes, careening faciality, studies itself, amazed. Emily Dickinson nestles herself in my pubic hair. Need it be visceral to be real? Or is it only the resistless rhapsody of a night song that overwhelms decorum? Oh, look at that. There's another whole poem here. I'm not going to read it, though. I'm taking enough of your time. I'm going to read a very brief one, I think. What? No, I would rather read one that I'm skipping.
Well, then read it.
Okay. This one is called Enclosures, which actually picks up on Jardín Cerrado, enclosed garden of Emilio Prados. See, everything is interwoven somehow. And I don't interweave it. Gods do. On a tag of paper, once a bookmark, are the words, "Enclosures as stated, enclosures as stated." The paper has yellowed. The edge that protruded from the limits of its vessel is ragged and brown, as if burnt by exposure, air, light, and different toxins found in the rooms where the book has rested. Shelves, like plateaus, negotiated on a journey of decades through apartments and woodland cottages where children were raised to their different ends. Enclosures, as stated, encapsulates a life of torn edges, ripped from a sheet of the sort once fed into typewriters, so aged. The purpose from which the words descend, now lost, but the tag surfaces repeatedly in recent daily life, and I rummage for a memory of its provenance. Enigmatic the nature of supposed enclosures, several or many, therapeutic or mercenary, of legal or contractual import. Enclosure, singular, suggest a garden or pens where goats or cows are kept. Shelter from wind, plus a change, they say, a life not lived, Jardin Cerrado, as if there were only one, but populated by moonlight and silver fountains, the clacking of olive leaves, that which gleams and does not gleam. That's Canto 74, Ezra Pound. Graus, grauhopis, that gleam, see, that's what the clacking of olive leaves, grauhopis, multilingual pun. I'm trying to do a translinguistic poetry. Graus, grauhopis, at that time the enclosed man sought grace from God. Aura yepideth. He lived on an island that submerged like a whale into surrounding seas, the morning of a resurrection without hope, though he fell to his knees terrified. Enclosures like prison cells constrict the dreaming heart at the very moments of its doomed sojourn. Enclosures are penalties, no doubt, and, as stated, implies a lack of alternatives, the true knell of doom and its encumbered language. Thought, averse to consequences, diverts itself with puzzles, poems, hallucinogenic experiments. What promises of forgotten satisfaction are most at stake, or not? Wrapped in folds of uncertainty, the prospect of affection caused him to tremble. Impossible to be so naked. He hugged his knees. Foolish clown.
Thank you.
I don't know Greek.
Yeah. But you can fake it.
Right. Well, the idea is that the next generation of collage poetry or serial poetry should be translinguistic, so that's my game. Thanks for coming.
May this be the first of many visits for both of you. We take the summer off. Coming back in September, we're going to be, Ed Foster is going to be bringing out a whole book of Patricia Pruitt's poetry, and so we're going to celebrate that in some fashion somewhere around mid-month. And one note, it's been a terrible season for rock and roll as the series has gone on. We started out with losing Leonard Cohen and Chuck Berry, Greg Allman this week, and I was reminded, thinking about him, sitting on the floor of the Fillmore. I never saw the whole of the Allman Brothers, but I saw right after Dwayne Allman was killed. And they pulled around after they just walked out and started to play. And they arrived at the place for the first Dwayne Allman solo, and nothing was there. Everybody just put their heads down and kept playing through what would have been his solo. And at the end of that, Dickie Betts just exploded with, I mean, the most beautiful, grief-laden solo that I have ever experienced. And everybody sitting around me, I mean, as the silence of the solo was, you could feel people suddenly going, oh, yes. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gesture by them, and a great example of musicianship and brotherhood. So on that thought, we'll see you in September. Thank you.
Really?
Will, yes, I don't say that.